Good morning, folks. Thanks for joining us. I'll give you a second while people join the call. All right, we have a lot of ground to cover today, so I'm just going to jump right in. Good afternoon or good morning from wherever you're joining us today. My name is Ava Magoon, and I am an assistant director from Northeastern University's Alumni Relations Office. I'm thrilled to partner with TIAA Smith, who is a Northeastern MBA alum and head of tech partnerships, acceleration, and culture transformation at TIAA, as well as our colleagues on this webinar, TIAA's Cybersecurity Insights, Protecting Yourself Online and Building a Successful Career. As a heads up, this webinar will be recorded and posted to the Northeastern Alumni Relations YouTube channel for future viewing. If something during the webinar sparks your interest, we will be taking questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar. And I will now pass things along to our moderator, Julie Moog, who is Managing Director of Cybersecurity at TIAA.
Thanks so much, Ava. Welcome, everyone. We're excited you joined us today. My name is Julie Moog, and I'm a Managing Director for TIAA's Cybersecurity and Fraud Organization. We'll be sharing timely and actionable insights on two very important and current topics today. One is how to protect yourself online. The second is how to thrive in the cybersecurity industry. Both of these topics are at the heart of TIAA's mission, strengthening how we operate, delighting our clients, and leading in lifetime income. We will have Q&A at the end, so if you have any questions throughout the session, please submit them and we'll ask them during our Q&A portion. Now for me to introduce our panelists. With me today are three leaders from our Global Cybersecurity and Fraud Management Organization. Upendra Marikar, who is our Chief Information Security Officer, Raj Dotri, who is a Managing Director and Senior Executive for our Cybersecurity Platform Engineering team, and Dale Jones is the Senior Managing Director of our Enterprise Fraud Management team. We're going to kick things off today by asking each panelist to share 1 to 2 minute snapshot about what sparked their interest into getting into cybersecurity and/or fraud, and how that interest led to their current TIAA roles. So Pendra, I'll kick it off with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys. It's an honor to be here. I'm Chief Information Security Officer. I lead cyber and fraud management for TIAA, and it's an honor to be here. So go ahead, Julie.
Yeah, can you just start with giving us some insights into what got you interested in cybersecurity and what led you to, or how that led you to be here of CISO at TIAA?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So, it all starts, I will categorize that as 4 Ps, Julie. The first is it starts as a profession. So the way my journey started is that I happen to be an engineer, like some of you guys are, and started writing code. And I was privileged to write the code for the CVV2 that you see at the back of the card, the 3-digit number, the magnetic stripe that you see at the back of the credit card. I happened to write that particular piece of code. And with the cryptography and security, it just fascinated me. So when I talked about the 4P, it initially started as a profession. The second P is cyber very quickly became a passion for me. And the passion is that it not only gives me an intellectual stimulation, but it also, it's a fantastic field, where I feel very passionate about. When you talk about TIAA, TIAA is a very, very mission-driven organization. It has a purpose of protecting older adults, securing retirement income, delivering on the fixed income promise that we have. So it's a purpose. So the third P is that it's a purpose for me to protect this organization and for all of us. And final fourth P is privilege. So it's a journey, Julie and team, for me personally, from going to just like a profession, just like yet another profession, to treating it more like a passion, then how do I turn the profession and the passion that I have for cyber to a purpose where I'm doing good not only for myself but for the entire humanity, and then treating that as a final privilege that I'm very blessed to be leading this organization.
Thank you, Pendra. Raj, I'll hand it over to you next.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, my journey in cybersecurity was very interesting. I started my career as a network engineer, and my focus was mainly on maintaining like the local network and wide area network. I'm talking about back in 2000s, right? And when I was troubleshooting an issue on our network, I came across like some different packets that were coming on the network. And we started troubleshooting those packets like, hey, why are these packets coming on the network? And it was bringing down our network. And so it brought, and then we found out that this was due to a worm that was on the network, and it brought down the entire network for our organization. It created a DDoS attack. And it was not just on our network, but also many organizations were impacted with this, right? And now we know that that was like the SQL slammer that happened back in 2002 and 2003. And that got me interested into cybersecurity. And from there, my journey started. I actually learned a lot of things about the network of different systems that are there connecting the entire organization and how do we protect that. But I wanted to learn the basic fundamental things about how Unix, how Windows, those platforms are there. So I learned those technologies, and that got me interested, and my curiosity about like finding the problems, right? That helped me in my journey with a very good support from my peers as well as my managers. I was able to get into the cybersecurity, and I continued my journey into cybersecurity by doing my certifications in CISSP. I did my master's as my journey progressed into cybersecurity. So that's how I got into it's just like when I see a problem, I need to understand more details about it, and that got me into cybersecurity. So
Awesome. Thanks, Raj. And last, Dale.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm glad to be here with you. So my background's a little different. I started out in financial services fraud prevention about 34 years ago, really before cybersecurity really took off. And I got my first role as a junior fraud analyst working for a bank and doing some of the first detection concepts around deposit and credit fraud. So things like check kiting and counterfeit checks and card fraud, and also internal employee fraud. And back then it was all paper-based paper-based concepts. So quite a long time ago. But I was immediately bitten by the fraud bug. I discovered this love for finding fraud and fighting financial crime. And so I charted out a journey, a learning journey path for myself to deepen my fraud expertise. I later gained some anti-money laundering experience, ultimately some leadership experience. And so over the last decade at TIAA, I've been able to bring together fraud, AML, and cyber experiences as the threat landscape has evolved. And it's really exciting to see how these disciplines have come together.
Awesome. Thanks. It's wonderful and inspiring to hear the journeys of our leaders. And it's interesting that in each one of your guys' cases, it didn't start with cyber and fraud. It has evolved over time. So that's great to see. Here at TIAA, we like to talk about leadership in the context of us leading in lifetime income for our plan sponsors and participants. Helping all of you protect yourselves online is how we lead in cybersecurity and fraud. Let's get into how we can do this in more detail with our leaders. Upendra, from an executive perspective, what role does leadership play in fostering a culture of security within an organization?
Yeah, that's fantastic question, Julie. There are three parts to this question. The first thing is, what does a leader do? right? The second is what's culture? And the third thing that you are asking about is what role we as cyber leaders play when we are leading the organization and when we are fostering culture within the organization. So these are three parts. So let's talk about the first part, which is what does a leader do? So leader's role, and many of you guys are in a leadership role in your organizations. And it doesn't really matter, guys, whether you are an individual contributor or you are leading the team, you are a business leader. So it doesn't matter. So, and the job of a business leader is to deliver business results. That's number one job all of us have. So when we are delivering business results, there are five things that we have to do. First is we have to establish a vision. What do you want to deliver? The second thing as a leader you want to do is communicate your vision. So that is, if the vision is with you, and if you're not able to communicate, you will not be able to you will not be successful in delivering the business results. The third thing is, how do we rally people around it? Because a leader will have people who are following you. Otherwise, you are just going to be a lone wolf over there. The fourth thing is that you have to inspire people to rally behind you. And the fifth thing that you have to do is execute as a team. So these are the five things that a leader has to do to deliver business results. Now, culture. Let's go to the second part of the question, which is the culture. So imagine organization as a necklace. The thread of that particular necklace is culture. So culture within the organization can either make or break that organization. It's more like a thread of that necklace. The necklace can just fall apart if you don't have that thread that is tying all these people, all these teams together. That is culture. So there are like written rules within the organization, and there are unwritten rules within the organization, and that forms culture. So we talked about what the first part is, that is what a leader has to do is to deliver business results, how important it is for culture to be embedded within the organization, because culture can make or break the entire organization. So as the question says is that how does cyber fit into this? We as cyber professionals and fraud management professionals, we are business leaders. We have to deliver these business results. And what that means is that we have to do it securely. So to do that, we have to foster a culture of embedding cyber in the culture so that it is part of DNA. And so we don't need to put any extra effort. The organization did not put any extra effort to have cyber as a part of the mindset. It's like fitting in when you are doing a plumbing of the house versus retrofitting it. You rather fit it in than retrofit it. So the cyber leader, the role, in terms of culture is that you have to be a business leader, number one. Number two, how do you build trust with your peers and the organization teams and demonstrate that behavior very consistently? And then the third part is that we need to reinforce the cyber part of the culture, showing synergies between businesses, showing synergies between culture, and making sure that cyber is seen as something that is not stopping, but more as a business enabler. So the role of a cyber leader, Julie, to answer your question, is communicate, communicate, communicate that the cyber is a team sport, is a community sport, and it is not different from delivering business results.
Thank you, Pendra. We talk frequently about the importance of cybersecurity being a we thing. Pendra just referenced it being a team sport, a community sport, where we all help each other to strengthen cybersecurity. Related to this, I now want to ask Raj to share with us a few ways he protects his own data and devices, and then offer steps that we all can do to protect ourselves. Raj, Can you speak a little bit about how you personally protect your data and devices and simple ways that everyone can take to improve their security online?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's important that we keep our information safe online, right? And not just for us, but our families as well, right? Our kids, our parents, grandparents, and all that, right? So we need to make sure that we have proper security hygiene in place for keeping our data safe. So a couple of things that I can definitely recommend. One is using a strong password, right? Our password hygiene is very important. We need to ensure that our password is complex enough, right? And we need to have like passwords that are different for different websites or any applications that you are using. So never share the same password on different applications or website. Make sure it is different and it is complex. And also you can make sure that your email address is safe, right? If you are signing up with your one email address with multiple different websites, uh, that's not going to help because you will get a lot of communications from these marketing emails, right? So better to have like a different email address. Nowadays, there are a lot of technologies that help you with hiding your email addresses as well when you sign up with anything. Having a multi-factor authentication, right? Like your passwordless authentications that you can use, right? Those are very important to have. So especially with your financial and healthcare websites where you sign up, you need to ensure that you are using passkey or multi-factor authentication to authenticate to those websites. Few other things you need to be very careful with is like how do we ensure that your laptop or your desktop that you're using is safe, right? Like, are you having proper antivirus and malware controls on your computer? Those are the things that you should be implementing, and always use like a software that is up to date, right? Any software that is out of date might have vulnerabilities and you might be subject to attacks, right? And always lock your device when you're traveling. When you're traveling, you need to make sure you lock your devices and have a proper pin to unlock it. So those are some of the things, Julie, that I can recommend that we can keep ourselves online safe.
Thanks, Raj. Phishing, one way that cyber attackers get in and people fall susceptible, continues to be one of the most widely used ways cyber criminals are launching cyber attacks. And the reasons are straightforward. They tend to work and they don't cost a lot to produce. And we're seeing phishing and other types of cyber attacks, such as deepfakes, increasing in volume and becoming harder to detect. To help us understand how to avoid these, I'm going to ask Dale to help us. So Dale, with the increasing use of AI in cyber and fraudulent attacks, how can individuals and businesses better defend against deepfakes, phishing, and other emerging threats?
Yeah, Julie, the first thing that comes to mind for me is, apply a bit of skepticism to what you're doing. So consider principles of zero trust, not just in your work life, but also in your personal life. So if you take a moment, slow down a little bit, be cautious on what you're doing. For example, we know some of these deepfake videos are getting better. We see them out there. But if you slow down, you can pick up on some things that might be off a little, perhaps the eyes or the lips or fingers or hands, or maybe the background provides signals that may indicate that it's unnatural or maybe unusual. Those may be indications that it's a deep fake. When you're thinking about, considering phishing, if the message has spelling or grammatical errors, that's a good sign that it might be a phishing email. Also, if you see indications to act urgently, or if it encourages you to click on a link or an attachment, it may be a phishing attempt. And so, lastly, I would say on phishing, pay attention to the email headers. That can also give clues. that it could be from a nefarious source. When you think about emerging threats, if it sounds too perfect, scrutinize the context, ask yourself if the email, or maybe it's even a text or a call, if it makes sense. AI can make these phishing attempts harder to spot, but often the context, the language that's used, maybe personalization, sometimes that can feel off or unusual. And if you ask yourself around, does the tone sound right? Is there an incongruent tone? Are the words overly formal? Does the wording seem inconsistent? All of these could be signs of an AI-generated phishing attempt.
Thanks, Dale. I'm going to stick with you as we switch to talk about the world of fraud and scams. So what are the latest scams that we should be aware of today?
Yeah, well, first, let me say that the universe of fraud threats that are out there is considerable, and there are a ton of different scams to be mindful of as our country's experiencing a significant increase each year in scam activity. But I think it's important for me to define what I mean by scam right off the bat. So these are frauds that are typically a little different than traditional frauds like unauthorized money movement or account takeover, because in the case of scams, the victim is actually moving money at the direction of the criminal. So let me just put this in the context for you, Julie. The Federal Trade Commission recently published its 2024 stats that showed that consumers lost more than $12.5 billion last year. And that represented a 24% increase from the prior year. And we know that underreporting is significant because of factors victims can face, such as embarrassment or shame. So it's a huge problem. But let me focus this answer on the impact to retirement. So we recently sought out a national expert in partnership with the TIAA Institute to study this problem. And we particularly focused on the impact to older Americans. And here's what we found. Older adults are prime targets for scams because of their accumulated wealth, the potential for technology awareness gaps, and in some cases, cognitive decline. And these scams can prey on trust and fear, often pressure victims with urgency or secrecy to act quickly without consulting others. And they are typically initiated through phishing emails, texts, calls, or even social media. Now, the scammers use a large range of tactics. I'm going to quickly highlight three schemes that we see the most of. The first are tech support scams. These are schemes where the scammers use malicious software or ads to convince a victim that their device information, assets could be at risk, are at risk, typically through getting a pop-up message on their computer. These sometimes include instances where the victim actually responds to the pop-up message, calls a fake number, and allows the fraudster to actually remote into their device. And that can allow the fraudster to harvest additional intelligence that they can use to further the scam. The second are imposter scams. These include impersonation of government agencies like maybe the FBI or the Social Security Administration, or businesses, for example, maybe impersonating a financial institution security department and calling you and saying you have a problem with your account. This is all done as a means to convince the victim to move money at the direction of the fraudster. And then the last one I'll mention is these romance scams, whereby a victim is engaged in an online relationship with somebody they've never met, and they're manipulated to give them money, typically for some kind of emergent or urgent need, like a medical procedure, business troubles, maybe a child that's in need, and these can lead to significant losses. So what we found in the research is that financial scams leave victims with more than just monetary losses. It includes often emotional toll, shame, loss of trust, social withdrawal, and those can all exacerbate isolation and vulnerability to victims.
Thanks so much, Dale, and Upendra and Raj, for your insights on how people in the audience can protect themselves and their family members online. We're now going to switch gears to the second part of our webinar. This will be all about how you can build a successful career in cybersecurity and fraud. All four of us are passionate about what we do and well aware of the utmost importance of collaboration broadly in our roles. With that, cybersecurity and fraud often is seen as a technical field, but it requires strong collaboration. Upendra, how do you foster teamwork between cybersecurity teams and other departments within TIAA?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, you are a business leader. Sure, you could come from technical background, non-technical background. Life is never a straight line, right? So you can end up like I ended up, like Rajneel and Dale will all ended up in cyber and fraud. Life is never a straight line, but ultimately you are a business leader. Doesn't matter what you do as a cyber and fraud professional. What does that mean? That means that you are delivering tangible business results. And our job as cyber and fraud professional is to enable, is to deliver a business results in a secure way. And nowadays, what has happened, guys, is that cyber and fraud is not only seen as a cyber risk or an operational risk or as an IT risk or even as a business risk. Nowadays, cyber has become an existential risk. So when we think about these two things, where that you are a business leader and then cyber has become an existential risk, how do you tie these things together to deliver these business results? Number one principle, make cyber simple. How do you make cyber simple? The way to do it is embed cyber and fraud management into people. That means make sure that you are all people, it's a team sport, make sure all people are aware of cyber and the risks that are associated that Rajneel and Dale just talked about. How do you embed cyber in process? How do you embed cyber in technology so that it's seamless to the organization? Something that we talked about is how do you embed cyber in culture? And all this should be with measurable outcomes. So we have to build trust when you are creating a teamwork, when you are fostering the teamwork across the organization. And the formula, Julie and team, that I use is CRISP, CRISP. What does that mean? C stands for credibility. When you are building trust with other people, the first thing is that you have to build credibility. The second thing, the CRISP, the R stands for reliability. How reliable is the cyber organization is? Intimacy, the CRI stands for intimacy. Where are we partnering with our peers? Are we developing those relationships, intimate relationships with our peers so that we are seen not as somebody who is stopping them, but enabling them? The S of the CRISP, CRISP, S stands for self-orientation. It is not about cyber winning or those guys losing. It's how do you make sure that we find this win-win across the organization? And the P, the CRISP formula that I talked about, the P stands for partnership. It's all about partnership. And that's how you go ahead and partner and foster the teamwork between the cybersecurity organizations and other departments within the TIAA. Make cyber simple, build trust by following this CRISP formula, because ultimately cyber is an existential risk and cyber is a team sport and cyber is a community sport.
Thanks, Upendra. Definitely agree on the crisp collaboration there. We need to be making sure it's a team sport. It's not just the cyber team who needs to be protecting. It's all of us who need to be involved in this team sport to protect. So Raj, let's pivot now to talk about one of the questions that often comes up is whether or not you have to have technical background in order to start and build a prosperous and fulfilling cybersecurity and fraud career. So Raj, what skills and certificates do you consider essential for someone looking to break into cybersecurity or fraud field?
Yeah, right now we are in a stage, like we are in the phase of AI, right? So I think the important skill that anyone should gain to be in cyber is AI skill. It's extremely important for cybersecurity and fraud. The three things in AI that I would recommend people look into is prompt engineering, AI literacy, and AI ethics. These are the three skills that you can start learning. Uh, and then there is also critical thinking and problem solving, right? How do we use the AI for critical thinking? How do we use the generative AI for problem solving? How do we ensure that our cyber mission can leverage these AI tools to mitigate the risk, identify the problems, and help us solve those issues, right? So those are the like skills and the AI that I would recommend. The other thing that we should also look at is how do we understand our technology stack, right? So the basic understanding of the modern technology stack like serverless, such as cloud as well, we need to understand the basic fundamentals of those so that we can understand how do we ensure that how do we protect those platforms, right? So those are the two things that I would recommend anyone who is getting into the cybersecurity world. Learn AI, learn the different technology platforms that are there, and then you will be able to get into the cybersecurity.
Thanks so much, Raj. All right, last question before we move to Q&A. So reminder, if you have Q&A questions, you can put them in the chat now and we'll answer those shortly. But for all three panelists, we're going to start with Dale. What's one piece of career advice you wish you had received earlier in your cybersecurity and fraud journey? Dale, start with you.
Yeah, I've actually been privileged to work with some great leaders over the years, including Upendra, who's my manager today. The one thing that I have picked up in my experience and learning from others is that things are always changing and it requires a learning mindset. So you continue to adapt, evolve. You never stop learning, especially when it comes to cyber and fraud, because things change so quickly. And if you do stop learning, you won't last in this business very long. So it's important to be really intentional about it. And this may look a little different from maybe person to person or role by role, but the key is to be intentional. Don't wait for somebody else to do it for you. You have to be intentional about planning it yourself, continuing to learn.
Thanks. Raj, how about yourself?
Yeah, one thing I wish I would have learned is like how do I communicate to the business the risk of cybersecurity, right? We identify a lot of issues with that's happening in the world, but how do I translate that and communicate to the business that hey, there is a cybersecurity risk here if we don't do certain things, right? To people as well, right? Like if you are clicking on the link, that opens up a malware or download something, how do we communicate that to the end users as well, right? That is the skill set that I wish I would have learned earlier in my career, communicating the cyber risk to the business risk.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's always important, especially when you're at an organization, to understand the business of said organization to be able to translate that cyber risk to the business. And Upendra, we'll end with you. What's one piece of career advice you wish you had received earlier in your journey?
Yeah, I mean, both Dale and Rajnil articulated very well. Very nice, lessons actually that we all should learn from. For me, right, I started my journey as an individual contributor and a naysayer. So I was a naysayer cyber. No, you cannot do it. No, you cannot do that kind of stuff, right? So what happened was in my earlier parts of my career, there were a few initiatives where I had to get to yes. I just had to. Why? Because that was good for business. So that realization came a little bit later in my career where you are a business leader. Even if you are a cyber professional, you are a business leader. You have to raise the bar. You have to think innovatively. You have to challenge the traditional thinking of saying no and then come up with an embed methodology of embedding security and raising the bar over here and saying getting to yes. So one career advice that I wish I could have gotten earlier is challenging myself to make sure that we are seen as a business result and make cyber simple. That's it, really.
Thanks so much. All right, thank you to all of you for your insightful comments and how we can better protect ourselves in today's ever-evolving threat landscape. And at this point, we're going to shift to Q&A. So we've got a few questions coming in. I'm going to open this first one up. Upendra, I know you're going to want to chime in here, but for Dale and Raj, if you want to chime in as well. But if there's no silly questions also for the audience, just to call out here that Tim mentioned, this might sound silly, but it's not. It's a serious question. Do you think AI will ever evolve to where we will use AI to help combat nefarious uses of AI? So Upendra, do you have a stance on this?
Yeah. So that is absolutely fantastic question, Tim. All right. I mean, and no question is silly question. So thank you for asking that. You're absolutely right. AI, like Dale mentioned, like Rajnil mentioned, has evolved, especially after Gen AI, which was like November 2022. We have seen an exponential growth in AI. Everybody talking about AI. So obviously, attackers, the bad guys, are going to use AI, and so are the good guys, right? So the way we are thinking about it is within TIA, we have cyber for AI and AI for cyber. That is how we are handling it. So what does cyber for AI means? That we being a business leaders, we have to enable other parts of the organization that are using AI. How do we enable them? How do we embed cyber and fraud management controls into those AI? And like I said, making cyber simple, how do you embed security in those initiatives that other parts of the organization are doing? The second thing that we are doing is AI for cyber. What that means is within the cyber organization, we have to use the new tools and new technologies like AI, and we are doing that. We are an AI first organization. So the analogy I typically give, which might not be the best analogy, but you cannot be fighting the battle against AK-47s with bows and arrows. So you have to use modern technologies to combat modern problems. So AI is not an option, something that we have taken seriously. TIA is an AI first organization, and we are using it. In fact, we just came out of a meeting half an hour ago where we are considering all the use cases for AI agents, agentic workflows. So more to come over there. But to answer your question, Tim, absolutely.
Great, thanks. All right, we've got a question from Conan here, which is, while cyber is primarily technical, can you weigh in and share your thoughts on a career path in risk and compliance, which is has a close link to cyber? So before I ask any of the panelists to chime in, I will chime in since the path that I've come up is through more of the IT risk and compliance space. So clearly there's a link. I've been at TIAA for 11 years, all within cyber, but prior to that, I came up through IT risk and compliance areas. So there is a close link both on the IT risk and compliance side, but just overall risk and compliance, as you guys potentially see already in the world with technology, emerging tech, AI. There's constant regulation and compliance requirements needed on technical emerging technology. So having expertise in that area, but with the lens of risk and compliance, is needed in really all industries, but also here at TIAA as well. So there's definitely a path linking risk and compliance to cyber, but also if you have a risk and compliance background, then being able to use that to pivot into cyber as well. But Upendra, Raj, Dale, do any of you guys have any other perspectives on this question?
Yeah, I do. So the way to look at it, I mean, obviously, cyber, like I was saying, is not only a business risk, but it's an existential risk right now. So there is definitely a path and compliance. We need to make sure that we are, for good reasons, there are some regulations and we have to comply to those regulations like NYDFS, TIAA caters to that, OCC, we have some subset, SEC, and these are, for good reasons, and we make sure that we protect the money of our customers. And there are risk organizations and there are compliance organizations. But one broader statement I want to make is that cyber and fraud management organization view it as an orchestra, guys. It's an orchestra, right? So you will have violinists, you will have pianists, you will have drummers, you will have guitar players, name your favorite instrument. And then you have somebody who is just waving the wand, which is more like a program management office or whatever you want to call it. And it's not just a technical field, right? So there is a role in this orchestra, role for each and every instrument player as well as the vocalist, if you will. So even if you are not from technology, there is a space, there is a spot in the organization for you. You are that instrument player, as a part of this orchestra. And, the person that who waves the wand is very important. Julie plays that role in our organization, for example. She is moving that wand. And if she flickers that wand in a different direction, the symphony might turn to cacophony, right? So that role is so important. So orchestra, we need to have symphony, not cacophony. It's not just a technical field.
Great. All right, I'm going to combine two questions here into one from Elizabeth and Nettie. So appreciating the call out to a learning mindset, and I'm curious, what resources could you recommend for someone shifting into a fraud and cybersecurity to learn more from a less technical or code angle? And tangential to that is Nettie's question is, how do you stay up to date with the ever-changing cyber and fraud landscapes across the nation states? So not just from the US, but from a global perspective. So do you have any insights from what people on the call can do to increase their knowledge and learning in the fraud and cyber space, not necessarily technical, but in general, as well as how do you all stay up to date with all the emerging threats that are out there?
Hey, I can start if it's okay, Julie, and I'll let my colleagues.
Go ahead,
chime in
Dale.
here. Yeah, I was gonna say, like, for me, when I'm embarking to continue to grow and learn, I try to start small and not bite off too much. So I make sure that in terms of my schedule, that I have time carved out for my continuous learning. And I'm trying to move, if it was a 10-point scale, and you think about, actually, I've heard Upendra mention this many times around generative AI as an example, and maybe on a 10-point scale, I'm a 2. How do I move to a 3 and then a 4? And so I do a lot of reading. I think, learning experiences that are based on academic experience are really fantastic, but also when you get a chance to to actually raise your hand and maybe step out of your comfort zone and volunteer to do something that maybe you don't have direct experience with, that learning by doing, I think is a great way to advance your skill set. Any other thoughts from the panel?
Yeah, I can chime in. So, from a learning perspective, it's up to the individual, right? Like I dedicate like my few hours every week on reading new technology that is emerging, that is coming up, right? I spend time reading about like what are the emerging threats that are there in the world right now, especially focusing on like the um, uh, external attacks that are happening on the organization. So I do a lot of reading on the web. I focus on how do we implement some of these AI technologies into our organization to help protect. So I focus more on reading like more information about like AI and emerging technologies.
These are great points. You know, I agree with both of you, right? I mean, there are three takeaways. Number one is that you have to know where you are in the on the learning journey, and it's not going to be a straight line again, just like life, and where you want to be. And there is no destination for learning. So learning is an ongoing and a continuous process. So knowing where you are, that's the foundation. You cannot build an Empire State Building on a weak foundation, for example. So you have to have a very strong foundation. So you have to calibrate yourself on the scale of 1 to 10. Let's say that, okay, I'm on 1, I'm on 2, and it's okay. Be true to yourself and calibrate yourselves. And like Dale correctly articulated, that you have to keep on, measuring yourself. Okay, I'm on 1. That's okay. How can I be on 2, 3, 4, and then continue that journey? It's a continuous process. And to what Rajnil was saying, that, dedicate few hours in your week just for learning for yourselves. This is a me time. And the most important person you are spending the time is yourself. So you can say that, okay, guys, this is my learning time. I'm going to carve out 1 hour, half an hour, doesn't matter per week. This is me. This is the most important person in my life, which is me. 1 hour, I'm going to invest, using the TIAA lingo over here, invest in myself and learn. So that will be my thing. There are several resources. One of the things that I have found, foundation, you can use books, but for something that is on the top of the foundation, when you are building 88th floor or 81st floor, like Empire State Building, in that kind of cases, you have to use medium, you have to use social, kind of things. You have to read articles, you have to read blogs, because that is more current. The books are dated, especially when the Gen AI and all these things come in. But this is a fantastic question. That's why I wanted to make sure that are the 3 steps that I articulate.
Thanks, Upendra. All right, Dale, I'm going to start with you on this one, but others feel free to chime in. What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about working in cyber or fraud?
Well, I think that one of the first ones that comes to mind is that you have to be, super, super technical. And that is true in some cases, or in some of the roles, but I will give you an example. Like I don't have a technical background, and I came from a more traditional, sort of fraud career track. And I have folks that are on my team that understand fraud typologies, red flags, but also how to service a customer that maybe is reporting a concern, or maybe has a red flag that they're concerned about, and we need to remediate for them. So skill sets in those situations are more associated with being able to communicate, understanding our products, things of that nature. So it's not all, necessarily super technical, but some of it is. And so depending on the discipline of, where you sort of fall in your career aspirations between cyber and fraud, whether it's technical or not is, it depends. So I would say that's one of the misconceptions, Julie.
Awesome. Any either Raj or Upendra, you guys want to chime in? I think Raj, you did articulate earlier, like having a mindset of critical thinking, problem solving, like those are really skills that coming into this field, we're looking for, whether it translates to technical skills as well. Not necessarily, it's being able to identify problems and think through them and think critically is really what's needed in this field. But all right, another question for you, Dale, which is going back to a little bit about the online safety for our family members. If we think about, our kids growing up online and then older adults, I know you spoke about this a little bit in your answers before, but they're less familiar with digital and technology. It could be overwhelming and scary for them. So what effective communication is important for us when we're talking with our kids and talking to older adults in our families? How can we best communicate to them, and what can we be saying to them to help them understand the digital landscape?
Yeah, the awareness component of that, Julie, is like really big, whether you're, sort of at the tail end of your lifetime or whether you're at the beginning part of your life. So the more that we can educate and create awareness about these types of threats that are out there and how to use good cyber hygiene, good fraud prevention hygiene, that goes a really long way. One of the things that came up in the research study that I mentioned earlier is that older adults are 80% less likely to fall victim to a scam if they've heard about that scam before. So I talk about this with like anyone that's in my life, whether it's at work or whether it's personal or whether it's at a family get together. I often, share with folks that I have an 81-year-old mother who is very digitally active, and I'm really grateful for that because there's so many ways that it enhances her life. But it's important that she's aware of some of these threats that are out there. So I talk about them with her a lot, how to use those best practices. But really important not to, scare people about this topic. We're all vulnerable to some of these scams that are out there. Probably many of our audience members have probably in the last couple of days received one of these toll scams by text that are going around. So there's so many different variations to it, but not to be scared by it, but just to employ, practices in your life to help you recognize and detect. Certainly, if someone falls victim to one of these scams, not to blame them. There's an aspect of, embarrassment that can come along, and sometimes somebody just needs to create, that trust to be able to come alongside and help them. So empathy goes a long way, patience, certainly, the education aspect, and starting really early. So if you think about our kids and the threats of cyber and fraud threats that are out there now with things like sextortion attempts, which are extortion attempts primarily against children that have been engaged online. That is also an epidemic that's happening. So creating awareness very early in life as a part of financial advocacy and understanding that these scams are out there and what to look out for, talking about it is a big part of combating that.
Thanks, Dale. And I'm just gonna ask one more thing of you. Sorry, Dale, I've got you on the hot seat right now, but I've heard you talk about before having trusted contacts in your, financial institutions and others to help with these things. Can you just talk a little bit to the audience about what that is and the importance of that?
Yeah, so a trusted contact is somebody that you can designate on a financial account, such as at TIAA, for example. That is somebody that we can reach out to if we're concerned about you. And they don't have any transaction power. It's different than a power of attorney or other types of legal designations. This is just somebody that you've authorized in your life. Perhaps it's a family member. Maybe it's an adult child or something like that, that if we have concerns about you, that we can call and reach out and ask for help to come alongside. And where that's important for us is in some of the scams that are out there, especially against older Americans, when say a romance scam, for example, there are times when the victim doesn't fully acknowledge or understand that they're involved in a scam. And so when you can reach out to a trusted contact that they have designated, sometimes that makes all the difference in being able to have somebody come alongside them and help them navigate the complexities of that situation. And, again, we have great success with it when we have, maybe a family member that a participant is named as a trusted contact to help in those situations and get them the help or possibly care that's needed.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, with that, I think we've wrapped on our time here today. Thank you to my panelists. Thank you all who joined, and I'm going to hand it back over to Ava to close us out today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to Julie, Dale, Raj, and Upendra for taking the time to speak with us about cybersecurity. Hopefully you're all leaving this webinar with stronger skills on how to be aware of scammers, foster teamwork, and adapt to the ever-changing AI landscape. So this concludes our webinar. As a reminder, this has been recorded and it will be posted on the Northeastern Alumni Relations YouTube channel. So yeah, thank you for joining and have a great rest of your day.